Create your own Macramé dream capture with Joey Wallace. Hello, my name is Joey Wallace. My sign name is the BSL sign for kangaroo. I'm here today to teach you how to make your own dream catcher. Take a look at what one looks like. What I've just shown you is a dream catcher. Before we start the process and talking about the things you need, let me give you a brief history of dream catchers. I'll explain what they're for and why people use them. Take a look at these photographs. Those were examples of different Native American dream catchers. Indigenous Americans believed that through the dream catchers, they could enable their children to have a good night's sleep. The dream catchers would stop any bad dreams from entering. They made the dream catchers for this purpose. The dreams would get tangled in the web. Take a look, they're like a web. If you imagine a spider's wove a web and they catch the flies on them, it's the same with the dreams. And it's part of their history and their cultural beliefs. The dream catchers only allow good dreams to get through. Now I will show a list of the things you need to make your own dream catcher. Here's what you will need: branches or hoops any shape or size, macrame cord or rope, scissors, hot glue or super glue, beads and feathers. Let's take a look at the different shapes of the frames you can use. You could have one like this, a square or diamond, or circles, I've got one more here, which is a moon shape. If you saw on the list, you'll notice that it says tree branches. If you can't afford, or you would like to get outdoors into nature to collect things, you could use branches. If you decide to use the branches, once you've collected them, you can't use them straight away. They'll be damp and swollen from the wet outside. The best thing to do is to collect them and keep them for 1 or 2 weeks indoors somewhere. You might put them in your garage or somewhere in the house, but leave them for 1 or 2 weeks to dry out. Then they'll be ready for using. The cord you use can be anything. You might order some from Amazon or go to a craft shop. You can look online and see lots of different options that are available for ordering. I've got 2 different ones here to show you. This one is called Macramé cord. It's specialist cord used with macrame. The other one I have is this. This is called rope cord. Both of the items I have shown you are perfect for either the weaving or for going round the outside of the frame because they are thick. If you want a smaller dream catcher, for example like this one, it's better to use a smaller thread, such as this. Or another example would be this one. It's best to select a cord or thread that matches the size of your project. The beads can be any beads that you like, but you have to make sure that the hole in the beads is big enough for the thread to go through, such as these ones. You have to make sure the cord or thread can go through them. If you're using smaller thread, of course, you can use smaller beads. So the other thing you're going to need is glue. Ideally, you want heat gun glue or super glue. Be careful if you're using the super glue that you don't stick your fingers together. Okay, let's begin the tutorial. The first thing you need is the loop and also the thread that you are using, or cord if you prefer. Take a look. You can see here at the top I've glued my thread using all-purpose glue to my frame. It's important that you either glue or tie your thread at the top. Don't worry which method you use, but it's important to get that fixed. Now I'm going to show you how to cover the loop. From the top here, I'm looping it over the top and through the centre. And you continue this process around the outside of the frame. Make sure you hold each one as you loop it so that it doesn't unravel. You might find that partway round you need a break, and that's fine, just make sure it's secure. Continue this method all the way round the loop until it's completely covered. Here's one I made earlier. On this one I've used 2 loops. As you can see, the smaller frame is glued inside of the larger, and I've covered all the outer frame with cord. This is another example where I've gone round the edge of the moon-shaped frame. Okay, and when you get to the end, just glue the last bit of the cord into place. The next step is the internal weaving of the dreamcatcher. Goes inside the hoop. Don't worry if you find it difficult or you find it a struggle or it looks out of place. I've had practice. I can show you the first one I made. It was far from perfect, but it's okay. As you can see, things aren't even, but it looks good. And I've got some larger gaps and smaller gaps, but it's nice. So now I'm going to change to a close-up view to show you how to make one. Here you can see the thread is glued at the top of the frame. This is the glue I used, all-purpose clear glue. From this point, I take the cord and stretch it across the top of the frame in a straight line. At this point, I thread the cord over the top under the frame and between the cord and the wooden frame itself to tie a knot. There should be enough flexibility to pull the entire ball of thread through. And you can pull it quite tight then onto the frame so that it stays in place. You then repeat this process to the next point round your frame. Again, you're going to loop it over the top, round the back, and up and through between the frame and the cord itself. Again, pull it tight, and now you should have 2 straight lines inside your loop. You can adjust the distance between these knots at this point. You're aiming to have pieces of thread that are the same length and distance across each part of the loop. The process then repeats as previously to create the 3rd knot. Again, you will loop it over the top, round the back, and up between the frame and the thread. Again, pull it taut and then check that each section is the same length as the previous. You have an opportunity now to adjust your knots should they not be the same length. The process then repeats again, the thread going over the top, looping over and coming back up and through the frame and your thread. Here you can see that my distances weren't quite equal, so I made a little adjustment. Now you've watched the close-up tutorial video, you can see on mine that I've completed the loops around my frame. Again, you need to make sure that the stretch of cord around the inside of the loop is equal. If you find they're slipping, don't worry, you could glue them or just pull them tight. I've now completed round the interior of the loop. Now we're going to repeat the process again, but this time you're aiming for the middle of the thread. Take a look at the close-up video again and you'll see how you repeat the process around the circle once more to get a second series of loops and knots. From this last loop and knot, you're going to take the thread and aim for the middle of the next horizontal strip of cord. As before, you're going to loop it over and under, back through the thread to create a knot. As before, you hold it tight, but there should be enough give in the thread to pull all of it through, either as a single loop or as the ball of thread. Here you can see that we now have a loop of thread and I can adjust it so it's central on the horizontal strip. I'm then going to repeat the process by aiming for the middle of the next strip of thread. As before, loop the thread over the top, back underneath, and then through the gap. You can then repeat the process on each strip of cord around the circumference of your loop. The process repeats exactly the same for each one. Make sure you're aiming for the centre of each strip of thread. You'll have seen on the video how we went round the loop once and then had a second interior circle. You could continue to have a third or fourth loop, as many as you want. Stop when you've had enough, it's entirely up to you. So now you'll have something that looks like this. I'm going to do another circle round, so I'm going to aim for the middle of the thread again, repeat the process in exactly the same manner, looping the thread over and under as I go to create a third circle around my loop. To make this third circle, I'm repeating the exact same process. So now I've gone round for a third time. If you're careful, you can continue all the way into the centre of the circle. Hopefully that's been clear, and I'll show you at the end what it looks like. Here is my completed woven dream catcher. For the last part, you can either put some beads on as you go through, or you could just add one bead in the centre before you tie the final knot. Here I'm threading the bead onto my cord. I have to twist this a little bit because it doesn't quite fit, but with a twist it comes through the centre of the bead. So I finished mine off with a central bead. But as you're going through the process, you can add beads as you go through. For mine, I just wanted one bead in the middle. And as you can see, I've just knotted in the middle, but you could also glue to fix that final cord in place. Once you've secured it, you can cut off the excess thread. Now, I have a feather I would like to attach. I will show you an example. The final step is adding a feather or dangling thread at the bottom of your dream catcher. Take a look. Here you go. Here you can see the feather attached, and I've added a bead. First I've threaded the bead through the cord. Then to attach the feather, if it fits in through the centre of the bead, that's perfect. If it doesn't, don't worry. Ideally you want to push the bead through, then thread the feather into the bead, and then wrap it around. If it's not secure, you can glue the feather, then wrap the remaining cord around, securing it with glue. Before you do this, you'll want to attach the thread to the bottom of the hoop. Take some cord like this, fold it in half, creating a loop at the end. Hold the loop at the top, have it behind the frame, and then thread the remaining cord up and through the loop that you've made. This will tie it to the frame. It will secure to the loop and the threads will hang down. Once threaded through, pull down tight to fix it securely. From here you can then add on your beads and feathers. You can see here how you can attach them. Luckily my feather fit through the bead along with the thread. Using my glue from earlier, I will fix the thread onto the feather. I'll do this by wrapping the thread around and then gluing the end. There you go, that's it. The feather is attached. You can attach as many feathers as you want. You can have several or just one. Depends how you want it to look like. I've done mine like this. As you can see, a few feathers and beads. Two things to think about. If you're worried that you might not be able to loop the thread round or you can't see the video to follow clearly, I have an illustration that you can use that has simple step-by-step guidance on how to loop the thread round. You could pause the video to follow the instructions. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.